Greetings, adventurers. I'm Max, and I compose background music and themes for tabletop games. Whether you're delving into Dungeons & Dragons, unraveling mysteries in Call of Cthulhu, or battling in Warhammer 40k, let my music set the perfect tone for your games. As a fellow tabletop enthusiast, I create tracks that resonate with your game's diverse realms, available on all major streaming services. Plus, I also offer custom commissions to tailor the perfect soundtrack for your unique campaigns. Ready for immersive gaming sessions across all genres? Visit Coltrane Compositions on Patreon for access to over 150 songs, including looped versions, that will make your game unforgettable. That's Coltrin Compositions.
Welcome back to Tabletop. This is the arbiter.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to Tabletopped. We are lost in a Halo game, I guess.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to Tabletopped.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to Tabletopped.
We're in our echo chamber.
And today I'm surrounded by three of the best people in the world.
I am surrounded.
I am surrounded. Please help me. My name is Nick. I host this podcast. Why don't we go around with names?
I am surrounded by fear and bodies.
And you are?
I'm your boy Rio.
Okay.
I'm the arbiter, Franco.
Great.
I'm the Master Chief, Shade.
Great.
The Master Chief doesn't talk, Shade.
No, he totally does. He just doesn't take his goddamn helmet off.
That's true.
Paramount.
Wow, got him.
Oh yeah, they
I didn't watch it, and I really don't care about Halo
really
either.
bad.
I don't care about Halo. So
You know, Silent Bob talks also.
He does.
A lot of silent characters talk, Nick.
Wow.
Wow. Except for Teller. I've never heard him talk.
I have.
He
heard
does
him
in
talk.
interviews.
actually, yes,
Yeah.
he does. It's very rare, but he does do it.
Yeah.
Voice of an angel.
Yeah, he seems a very nice person.
You know they're not friends in real life?
Yeah, they are weird. On that, they aren't friends in real life.
No, they don't. It's a
They're-
working relationship.
Yeah, they're basically business partners.
Same as the Mythbusters.
I love when
were
people.
they also?
I love when people like heard that and they're like, "Oh, they hate each other," and then everybody was like, "No, we're just like not like friends."
Yeah, it was like us, it's just a work thing.
Yeah, it's just like a
People
work
are,
thing. We're just
people
chill.
always go for a binary. Oh, if you're not friends, you hate each other.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
vectors.
That is crazy that Ken and Teller are not like
Friends?
I mean, I don't know. Like it's a business partnership. Kind of makes sense.
Basically,
I mean, work friends are friends, though.
But it's also their whole relationship is built on mutual respect of like, I think you're a really fucking good magician. And so like anytime one of them makes a trick that they're trying to put into a show and build it, because they all build the shows together, when one of them does a new trick, they have to convince the other person that it's good enough to put it into the show. So they'll run the trick, and then the person will be like, did you do it this way? Did you do this way? And then if they're like, no, they're like, great, let's put it in the show.
You said something that I wanted to make a joke off of, but then I thought about how Franco would react, and Franco made me a better person as a result.
Aw, Franco.
So I didn't say the joke.
You did it.
What is the joke?
He said that it was a mutual respect off of, you're a really good, really fucking good magician, and I was going to say, and the other one's a really good fucking magician. Now you got to figure out which one's what. See, it was that. I could imagine you going, ugh.
Ew.
Speaking also of like, I guess rating
Divisions
systems,
and,
divisions, things like that. If you like this podcast, head on down and give us 5 stars. Leave a review. We love to hear from you. You can also get in touch with us at our website, tabletopppod.com.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I read an article somewhere that you're supposed to do that at the top of the episode because people are still tuned in.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
So
Hey, Nick,
Remember to like and subscribe, guys.
I was just gonna say, you've got like really white teeth. Good job.
Hey, thanks, man.
He's an
Nice
actor.
smile.
He has to.
Honestly, I am pretty sure that all my teeth are gonna fall out of my head because I chew on them so hard at night. Like I've been waking
Get a
up
mouth
with,
guard, dude.
Just get a
I
fucking
have a
mouth
mouth guard, and
Get
I
a better
still
one.
get like such tension in my
from your dentist or a rando?
rando.
Get one from your dentist.
They're like $500.
Yeah, dog. They're $500.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Would you rather have $500 or your teeth?
I would rather have. Well, at what point in my life?
No, in the
In the
Always.
future.
Just the always. The full.
This show sucks. What are we talking about?
Yeah, let's get on to our subject. Today we're talking about factional play.
Faction play.
Yeah, in TTRPGs. So we're talking about whether they're NPC factions, whether your players are joining factions, all that kind of stuff. Rio, you started us down this little rabbit hole with the suggestion. So
don't turn the spotlight on me, bro.
I'm turning it right at you.
It
Get
was
your
your
shades
idea.
on.
He was getting pissed at us for not responding to his great ideas in the chat, and then he was
and
like,
then we're like, this is a good
and then we
idea.
said, yeah, this is a great idea. Can't wait for you to talk about it, Rio. And you're off.
And here we go.
Man, factions, they're great. So they're how you divide your world up into compartments. And if you're a man, you know how to compartmentalize very well.
Hey, maybe
that's
Rio
how we
shouldn't talk.
handle our emotions.
Wow.
And so emotions are a good use of factions. You want your rage
what?
faction. You want your sadness faction. You want your curiosity faction.
Is this real?
Is this
Do
how
you
you
really
make
believe this?
factions?
Hold
This
on,
is how you-
I'm building it. Let me cook.
Let him cook, yeah.
Let me cook. So in my world, the consortium has curiosity because they're out there. They're looking for answers. They're building
serious?
stuff. And then you've got the cult of Thor. They're a warrior caste. Anger. They're out there. They're your battle buddies.
So you actually do make all of your factions from core emotional dispositions.
Yep, sure do.
Wow, I thought you weren't gonna lie this year. I can see that's your lying face. That's your lying face. He was like, I'm not gonna lie this year, and then recently he was like, oh, I did lie this one time actually.
Relapse. But it worked. It's a good theory.
Yeah, I think that it's an
It's really
interesting
coming
theory.
together.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it's a good example of how you could just improv any D&D.
wow, that's deep.
But no, I to kind of pick up off of that, I do think that whether or not you had done this intentionally with your emotions, there is an emotional theme in a lot of your game, or through line sort of in a lot of your games. So
I'm very deep and introspective.
Yeah. Wow. You really gave me a lot to think about.
Can I talk now?
Yeah. Sure.
I love factions. I use them in my games. Factions, I think the best way to make a faction is think of a group of people, give them something to want, and give them assets, and give them goals. I have a system that I use that is based on Mouse Ritter's system. Mouse Ritter is free. You can get Mouse Ritter on the internet. MouseRitter.com? I don't know. Probably
Tabletop
not.
sponsored
Maybe
to
just Google Mouse Ritter.
Mouse Ritter, M-A-U-S, Mouse Ritter, R-I-T-T-E-R. It's a great game. It's free. It's about little mice. You can be mouse, and you can fight cats and stuff. But they have a great faction thing, which is basically like during like downtime times, like maybe like a week or like a month or something like that, like in game time, you roll a d6, and on a 4 and 5, the faction advances one of their goals by 1, and once they fill all the little goal tracker things, they achieve their goal, and so they'll evolve. And then if you roll a 6, they advance twice. And so I use this in my current 5e game, so you can put this anywhere. It's very agnostic. But basically, yeah, like I have given each of the factions that I have in the game. I have a faction like the Vampire Duke, who the PCs are kind of friendly with, but kind of, they're a little bit, on looser terms.
How friendly can you be with a vampire?
Become a vampire yourself. But then
aren't you in a very authoritarian, like structured relationship?
Yes, he's our patron, warlock patron.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I just fudged it. Whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
And there was a certain point where she went up to the Vampire Duke and she was like, hey, yeah, like we we got like knighted, we have like a knighthood and stuff, and like we have some land, and we were thinking of like usurping this other duke. What do you think? And then he was just like really cagey, and he's like, okay, interesting. I'm gonna go now. But it's like a real like, it's like, oh, is my underling going to one day, it's a different duke that she wanted to usurp, but
they said to a duke, hey, how would you feel about us totally killing another duke?
How would you feel about us taking over a different duchy and then also becoming, powerful as
How
well?
do you feel about us
Yeah.
totally just going against the hierarchy and against changing up the status quo?
The other factions I have are like the church. There's a cult that they're familiar with that has been advancing. One of the things, and I can say this because they've already achieved this goal. One of their goals was to infiltrate the like the city guard and like get weapons and stuff. And so like I had the tracker, I rolled a few times on it after like, certain periods of time. And it's basically so that the world is advancing and changing with them. And so like these like threats that they know from before are, getting more and more powerful alongside them.
Do you have any?
Go ahead. Me? I was gonna say this is like that would be a fun sort of like in-game background you could be running, in which you have like a criminal organization faction and a city guard faction, in which the criminal organizations are trying to evade the city guard, and the city guard are trying to catch. And
part of it is like a back and forth too.
Yeah, so it's like their goals are counter.
Yeah.
And so you just who's
so
on
like
top
you can
each session. Yeah.
You can delete like a progress bar from one faction if the other one advances on a certain way or whatever, and like if it fits with the story, and then the PCs can also interfere and be like, oh, we're gonna help you guys do this, and then it's like, okay, great,
especially if you have like
achieve
two
that goal.
criminal organizations who are also competing for resources, and there's a city guard looking for both of them.
Yep.
So you have like a whole love triangle, but opposite.
Do you ever? This is my question that I was going to ask, and this sort of brings it up into high relief. Is do you ever have it when you roll that people are going backwards in their efforts?
No, but you could certainly put that in.
Like you could roll, a nat, like I roll a 6 or a 1 or whatever, and that means that this faction has failed in an attempt and they've expended resources, and that means that they're gonna
go down by 1. No, I mean they don't have to go down by 1. I think the lack of progress is probably enough, like statistically. But this has been working for me fine as it is. I've been running this for like a couple of years now.
And I also would worry about player interest lost if you start taking away steps that they've made. Because you could
the
really
factions have made.
But that would be a faction, so it wouldn't be players specific. Like, it could be that like, hey, we have allied ourselves with this merchant group. The merchant group does a bad investment or whatever, and they fade in power, and then it's like, oh shit, we've allied ourselves against another faction that now has more power than our faction that we've allied with. So that could be interesting, but like also, like you said, it could make them feel bad about it.
I think if they fail in any kind of way, like if they revert in any kind of way, it's probably most interesting to do it with another faction kind of starting to fill their like kind of overtaking them or whatever, like where it's like, rather than it just being like, oh, they just lost some prestige for X reason or whatever, versus like they lost this prestige because this other group did something to them.
Right.
And then that way it's a little bit more active.
An external cause would be great for like losing ground, but not like, oh, I rolled badly and now we lost movement. But like, oh, there was a earthquake and your warehouse took damage. So that would be a way to remove progress.
That's what I was saying too, yeah.
I wouldn't remove progress from like a bad roll.
Yeah.
That just seems bad.
One thing I want to ask Shade, because this way of faction management is very like you, Franco. It's very much like, let's make a system, let's make a
procedure.
Make a procedure to run this.
Why make it more difficult than it has to be?
Exactly. But it also feels like very much your play style. So I was wondering, either Rio or Shade, how do you approach factions in your games, and do you do it in a similar way, or do you do it in a completely different way?
Oh, also I would say like all of the golds build on top of each other. Yeah. So like the first thing that they do is they're going to arm themselves. The next thing that they're going to do is they're going to invade this area. The next thing that they go do after that is X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
My factions usually are a person. So I think Franco's
person. I also do that too. Yeah. It's like persons and groups.
Yeah. So my factions are always like, cause like I'll have Maya from the consortium, and she's the one that interacts with the story, and I'll be like, what does she specifically want? And I don't really do the whole like, what is the group's goal? I always go, what is this person wanting? How can this person help the party? And of course, it's like. How I used to play, because I'm on a 5e hiatus. I'm looking for my next game, my next rule source.
Right.
I'm in a moment of change, of growth.
Yeah.
I'm a Morpheus. I'm in a polyamorous relationship with the TTRPG world right now.
You're in your something era.
I'm in
Fill in the blank.
I'm in my slutty textbook era.
Nice.
I'm reading all of them.
I'm a whorish
Flashback to
professor.
2 hours ago. I don't read.
Well, I mean, I buy them for the cover art.
Right, exactly.
And I actually don't read. I've bought so many books I've not read. What was the question?
Rio
Oh.
actually can't read. He doesn't
You're getting under the covers.
I'm getting under the covers.
Nice.
And so, yeah, my factions are very loosely organized. I don't have a system. I just like, oh, what would be fun for this faction to have done since last time? And then I do big swings with mine.
It's cool.
But I really should be doing more concrete.
Should is not a...
Should's not. You shouldn't.
No,
should. And
not
you
should.
shouldn't.
Should.
Could.
You know? You just can.
You
Shouldn't
can.
or get off the pot.
Try it out.
You know?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I mean, in my mind, it really depends on the game itself. There are some games where I've had factions that are a little more involved. I tend to be more narrative driven, although I like systems. But I think that it needs to be, for me to implement a system, a game that really focuses on that faction play, where it is a central pillar of the game. For me to actually enact any kind of
Yeah, to that point, I always have the factions as part of my world building step, but not often in my playing step,
Right.
session prep.
it's definitely
Part of my prep is making those goals, and then that way the goals are just kind of like, okay, great, like they're just there. I don't have to think about it ever again.
right.
I think the play style that I have involves a lot of upfront prep, and then once I start playing, like session to session, very little prep, almost no prep.
Yeah, this is, I think, different than that for me. Is that like, for me, I do a lot of, I would say a much less of amount of work that like you or Shade do, where you have like a Word document, you're putting everything in, you're basically coming up with like the history of the world.
I
all
use
these
Obsidian.
factions. Great. But
OneNote.
but I don't actually do much of that. I kind of come up with a general like thesis or idea, and then I do like a first session, and then I will do more work in between each session because I
Kind of based on how they interact with those factions. That's
and
cool.
make it more like specific. Also, it's just because like I have a really hard time having a very multifaceted factional like game, I guess, because most of the time the two factions I'm dealing with is like whatever the players are facing and themselves and the neutral party, which is like, you know, the townsfolk or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think much outside of that.
So I would say, Nick,
Yeah.
if we go to your Candlewood game, Candlewood? Candle Cove.
Sure.
Candle Cove.
Yeah.
Your Candle Cove game had a bunch of factions in it.
Yes.
You had you had like, I guess it's like, you had the mayor, you had the owner of the hotel or whatever, you had the sheriff, right? And you had situations like when you had when the hotel worker, the hotel owner or whatever burned down the hotel.
Yeah.
Like that was like kind of a thing, like she's going to do this if this happens.
Yes.
Like, it's like, oh, she's going to inevitably do this or whatever. And I think that is like, that's kind of part of it. Like individual, like factions don't have to be like, you know, big organizations or whatever.
Right.
They can just be like one person that is like powerful.
Maybe
like
that's
the sheriff, and the sheriff is like, I like to, you also like to give, I also like to give the factions like specific assets. Like what are they good at? What do they have?
Yeah.
The sheriff has like the law on his side, and he has his deputy.
Yeah.
Right. And then like,
the hotel owner had a bunch of like yearbooks and like information on the thing in the basement.
she had a lot of like lore about the thing that was going on.
Yeah.
And then the
mayor just had like a lot of influence with the local, like the local.
Exactly.
Right. You also had the research facilities.
Yep.
The miners.
But I would say that for me, like the way that I think about this though is still only 3 factions because the 3 of them are working together to cover up this
But
thing.
they all want different things.
But they all want different things,
Yes.
Right.
Which I guess would make them like
factions
separate
within factions.
factions within
It's very
factions.
factional.
But the way that I think about that is much more upon like a personal motivation and then playing a character basis rather than like moving a group around, which and like this is not to say like that I don't want to do that or I don't think that it just seems like very complex because then when I think about like what you're talking about of these more organizational forces moving, then because for me it's like, okay, but even within the small 3-person faction I made in Camo Cove, there's 3 different perspectives, and they can be turned against each other.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I guess the only thing I'm trying to do in this part of the discussion is not convince you like my way is right or whatever.
No, totally.
I would like to perhaps convince you that it is not quite so different from what you do.
Yeah,
and like
I'm
what we all
open to
do,
that.
really. You know?
Yeah, I guess for me, like the big thing is like, how do you? Because what I wanted, like, I'm interested in building games that aren't versus specific individuals, but are more like a group versus a system of government or an ideology or something that is much more of like what you're talking about, which is a factional force, right?
Play Planescape.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's all that it is, right? It's like all the ideologies are like personified.
Yeah.
Right?
They're literally factions with fractals at the top. And,
Right.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
God, I need to tell you more about Planescape.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the thing that you're saying, right? Like the movements thing. It's like you got to think about like, okay, what does this cult want? They want to, find an appropriate sacrifice to summon their whatever, like they have the sacrifice. They need to uncover the ritual that will get them the thing that they want and to summon their god back into the world. And then the last thing is enacting that ritual, and that's the set of goals, right? And so like, yeah, the leadership is the ones that are driving it. There are specific, and then on my factions, I usually also have like specific personalities that are relevant.
Yeah.
Like I have a church faction for my open table game, and the leader is like the archbishop, but then there's like other people that are also relevant personalities for the thing. But I kind of try to unify their objectives to align with what the faction wants, just to kind of make it simpler for me.
Yeah.
I think that's one way to like kind of make it simpler, but like their personalities can be different, but the sort of the goal of the whole is important.
The goal of the whole is very funny.
And then if you have like divisions within the faction, they're just new factions. He's just laughing.
Yeah, sorry. I lost it for a second. But no, I think that's actually really interesting.
Goal
hole. For me, the thing that I kind of maybe want to talk about after this break, I don't think so, but let's just keep trying.
How about this? Hole!
Yeah, why don't we head to a break and we can really dive into which one of these is working?
Dive into the hole?
Yeah, exactly. But after we come back, I would love to talk about...
let's see if we actually do that.
Yeah, faction play at a distance versus in like when your characters are actually interacting with factions, because I think that's where our ideologies kind of collide.
Yeah, it sounds like a good goal.
And we'll talk about something completely different after this break.
5 GMs in a Trench Coat is back, and this time with Season 3, as GM Tanlin uses Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for her story.
Imagine the stench of fear, of sweat and of blood, cold stone beneath your palm as you feel your way down an impossibly dark and endless hallway. Here there's as much fear as there is isolation, and as much hopelessness as there is violence, or at least fantasies of it.
Join Callan Omoris Caldwell, played by Adam Gonzalez, Reen Sato, played by Kim Siyuki, 2.5 Horns, played by Jesse Espinoza, and Onder Madison, played by Tanner Sherlock, as they navigate the kingdom of Miltant and the horrors that await them.
So you guys hear, like, an alarm bell, like, fucking, all the doors go, shadunk, and then you also hear, like, coming from the ceiling.
5 Gems in a Trench Coat is a TTRPG actual play podcast where 5 friends take turns weaving stories through the tabletop game of their choice each season. With new episodes out every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are in Silent Hill. It was just a joke before.
So welcome back to Tabletop. We've decided that while Whole was really funny, it needs more context, and Goal is sort of like a spin-off of like sports. So we're going with Goal. Before we left, you challenged me to see if I would be able to get us back on the subject, and I'm going to try right now, which is...
Sorry, I was texting my wife.
which was that...
You're married?
Answer the question, Franco.
I don't exist outside this podcast.
Okay, great. So the thing that I want to talk about when it comes to factions is it easier, do you think, to try to pilot these big groups in a more like an undirected way until your characters get close enough to the factions that they can see the inner workings, and then you make them as complicated as you need
Why
them
do you
to
need
be.
them to have inner workings?
Because I just think that, like, for what I was saying when it comes to the factions in Candle Cove,
Yeah.
the 3 players are in the same faction, which
How
is
detailed? I mean, how detailed is that? Is that inner working? You know what I mean? It's like not. It's
well,
not
they all
super
have
detailed.
they all have different end goals, right?
Yeah, they're each different factions.
But that's
Yeah, but they're not different factions because they are ideologically trying to do the same thing against the players,
But in different ways.
In different ways. So that's more
I think what you
tactics
guys
than-
what you're both getting at is you have a faction
Tell me what
at a
I'm getting at.
distance, and then as you move in closer, that faction breaks apart into smaller factions.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Is like, do you want to build your factions with internal like workings like that, or do you keep them super?
Any
just-
any faction
want.
with organization is
Do
going to
whatever you
have
want.
smaller factions within inside of it.
Right.
Like, I mean, I work in an office place.
Fractional
And we have factions inside of our
Fractal
our
factions.
main team. You have the cool kids, me, and everyone else.
Yeah, everyone else.
Everyone else.
Yeah, no, I totally get
Or as
that.
I like to call them, the others.
But like for me, the thing is,
Do you remember
because,
on Lost when they met the others?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, man, smoke monsters, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I'm worried about is that does factional play become oversimplified if you try to just keep them as like a monolithic group?
so.
I mean, it's a game.
Right. So, and I think that this is like maybe what I was trying to say with I don't really put in a lot of thought on the factions. Like, I'm not monitoring for most factions whether or not they are advancing or stagnant in their goals, because I choose to do that more in a narrative sense. Does it make
Like when they encounter them?
when they encounter them,
It's like a little
or
Schrodinger's faction kind of
yeah,
thing?
correct. Or when they encounter them, or when they
Our Chekhov's faction.
or when we don't have something going on, I might go, okay, cool. This thing that was going to happen, and maybe I've hinted at, or maybe I've just never talked about before with the group, is now happening, and it's the thing that they are going to be faced with as a challenge. If they bite it, great. We'll go on that hook. If not, then we don't care about that faction.
Wait, and so what happens if you don't interact with it?
So, I mean, for example, in our Waterdeep game, I mentioned that the Castellantiers seem to be trying to open up essentially a grocery chain, which
Yeah.
is not really, for you people who care a lot about Faerun and the Forgotten Realms, obviously grocery stores antithesis of, but who cares? It's my game. But that
Food deserts are a real problem.
yeah, does Waterdeep have bodegas?
right. Well, that's the thing that they're trying to essentially open up. And I mentioned that, and you guys.
And the sign says elvish, human, gnome, dwarvish groceries here. I love that about bodegas. They're just like every
yeah,
ethnicity.
every single. But you guys haven't necessarily bit on that because you've had other things that you've had to deal with.
I'm busy. There's a plague.
Yeah. And so, like, that will play out in the background in my mind. And later on, if I want to muse that, I can decide in the moment how far along did they get in this scheme. Rather than measure it and keep track of it.
Do you think
as, like,
that's
a little
more or
mini game.
less work?
I think so. I think that it is less work because ultimately, I mean, for that particular game, I told you guys when we started this arc, I am not doing any planning ever for it.
I think
So-
that also, and I'm sorry
No.
that I'm interrupting, but the thing that I kind of like about that is that it doesn't set up expectations that whatever it is that's in the background has to be addressed at some point.
Right.
Because like, do you keep the factions or your table up to date with what's happening with the factions as
Yes.
they move through their
every time a week passes in game,
Yeah.
or every time like a couple weeks or whatever passes in game, I progress all of the factions.
and
However,
they all know.
and they all know that I do that. They
Yeah.
don't know what happens, and they only see it if they interact with the factions.
Totally fine.
And
yeah.
I think I think the thing that you're saying, Shade, is I would think the way that you do it feels to me like more work because I'm making a creative decision
Yeah.
versus me randomizing a situation so that I can
Yeah.
react to it when I get to be surprised by my own roles.
Yeah,
I get
for
to
sure.
be surprised how the world is
doing.
progressing and reacting and stuff. And then, when they get home and, they stop the Gator War, and then they come back home, and then all of a sudden like the whole place is overrun with like the crab horde.
Yeah.
Because the crab horde has finally like built their underwater ships and been able to get onto shore and start invading Maritesk. Then, once they do that, like they'll show up and be like, oh shit, like this has been happening while we were gone. Like there's crab law now in Maritesk. Everybody's under crab law.
I'm working on a theory right now, and here's how it is.
Or if I don't roll enough, no crab law.
Okay.
Franco's working on like a tilled garden, and Shade is doing like the seed broadcasting thing.
Yeah.
He's just throwing his seeds out there. He'll come back and look and sees what's grown.
There's a joke there somewhere.
Franco's I'm not making a joke. I'm making a play style.
He's a gardener. I'm
You're gardener.
a seeding. A ranger.
You're a roamer.
Yeah.
You're a Johnny Appleseed.
You're Johnny Appleseeding it.
Which Jackie is related to.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we all know that, Shade.
Okay.
Which means that you, by law, are now related to him as well. You're like, fuck that guy. The thing that
Sheep thieves and apple spreaders.
The thing about Shade's way that I find appealing in a certain way
is that an apple joke? You know he hates that.
He's allergic to them.
It's ironic that she's allergic to apples now, though.
Yeah, that she is. Yeah.
Man,
too many apples on the genes.
It's the apple curse.
Yeah, was she cursed? Yeah, the apple curse.
It's the Appleseed the Appleseed family curse.
You have spread our kin far and wide. Now you must never partake of an apple again. No, but the thing I like about Shades is that he can basically say like, oh, this seed that I have strewn about is like now nobody cares about it. It's not growing. I'm just gonna let it. I'm cutting it loose.
Let it go fallow. Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody even knows or cares. Whereas
there is a faction that my group has been ignoring this entire time.
Yeah.
And they're gonna hate when they see it again.
So, but I think that this is because I actually really enjoy your style of play, Franco. Sure. Those kinds of games speak a lot to me, and it really just depends on what. Like, if I ever had a true, legitimate fucking Planescape game with a few of you, rather than the
what's Planescape? I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm currently only in one game. I'm ready. I'm ready.
What game are you playing?
Come back to fucking Waterdeep.
Yeah, I would love to.
Please, you're invited anytime you want.
Okay, great. I just didn't want to jump.
Why are you acting like you're not?
No, just because just very recently my Thursdays have opened up again.
Then yes, the next game you're back.
Okay.
But the big thing about the other game that I play in is that
the Dragon Knight one or whatever, Dragonlance?
No, so the Dragonlance has also sort of gone fallow, which I understand.
I mean that's I don't know
about
just
that
happened
with the scheduling.
Yeah.
The one that I'm playing in is Max Lethal Game, which was originally D&D, but now we're play testing Monotony, which is the game that
the card game.
Yeah, the card game.
Sick.
Which man, some crazy shit's been happening, and it's pretty. That game is so good.
Did you tell him about His Majesty the Worm?
Yes. Yeah. And he was like, "Fuck yeah!" And he started reading through it.
Hell yeah!
He was he made a couple of updates to his.
Sick. I love that. That game is wild.
We're actually at the spot where I have actually offered the three of you up in the new year to either play or run the game without having somebody like teach it to you, essentially.
Cool.
Because
you're fun.
So that he can like watch somebody who's first interacting with it either run a game or play in a game.
I'm happy to do that.
I want to
hear
be
me
studied.
now, Nick. Don't offer my time freely.
The thing that I'm really excited about that game though is like when it comes to the actual card game, you get better at the game of it. So the better you get, the leveling up happens very infrequently. The leveling up is more like, I know how to play this deck now, and it fucking rocks.
It's very OSR.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Planescape.
Yeah.
If I ever got an actual Planescape, factions are so central to that game that I 100% would implement something more like the Mouse Ritter system. And there are a variety of ways to do it. But for me, at the end of the day, it is very much just, a tracker like Mouse Ritter of are they succeeding or are they fading into obscurity? Right. I want a limited pool set or point set so that like everyone, you're distributing
That's really interesting, actually. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
Because then
only
it says
so
if
many
you're like, I
resources.
like
There's-
this
there's
faction,
only
you
so
can
many-
give them points.
Yeah,
I
well,
like that.
it's kind of so but it's not the players are another cross section on this. So the point system is power within a sphere.
Yeah.
And because there's only so much power, one faction could end up with all the points.
I love the idea that like
The
as
points are limited.
the points are limited, but also
like that
as
a
the
lot.
players accumulate influence and resources within a sphere or whatever, like it could be gold, it could be XP or whatever, that they could then spend that in a non-traditional way of like, I'm just gonna buy magic items. It's like, no, I'm gonna support this faction that is doing stuff.
Yes, and that's the cross section because those points are only for the factions themselves, and then there's the players standing within each
Nice.
faction.
Yeah.
So, and that standing is very simple. It is, did the players advance my goal in some fashion? Great, we love them more. Did they do something that has nothing to do with my goal? I don't care about them. Or did they actively work against my goals?
And
I
then,
hate them.
is there ways to get initiated into the factions
Yes.
as well?
Yeah.
Well, I was
That's
going to
also
say
cool.
that this is interesting and something that I've always thought about when it comes to factions in my games, which is like, does the faction have the expectation that you are going to do something for them when they need you to do it? Because
Right.
that means you're kind of part of the faction at some point. Like,
and that is
you're there.
definitely like
Oh yeah, like this could be like the debt system favors owed.
Exactly.
And whatnot.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think that system is trying to do with the
100%.
debts, and like to be like, hey, like I owe you a debt now. That means that sometime you're going to be able to come calling this in, and there's negative benefits to me if I refuse. But I think it's something that never felt good on a player level because it's like I don't want to owe people shit. But when it comes to factions, it's always kind of with the expectation that you're going to do them a favor at some point because otherwise, why would they help you?
There's
you know what I mean?
there's something cool that I saw in Cairn 2E, which is out. Everybody should check it out. It's free. And it's sort of like, because in that game there's no levels, so the way that you advance is through the fiction, and so one of the ways that you can advance is like within a faction. And so you're just kind of like, oh, now I'm like a knight of the realm. What does that get me? Well, it gets you like a fucking like plate mail or something like that.
love
It
that.
gets you like a horse. It gets you, or if you're like, oh, I'm going to take an oath with the church. Okay, it gets you this power, but as long as you follow this oath.
Yeah.
Like you take a vow of like silence or something, and so you can only speak in whispers. And so like, and then in that way you can cast like,
That's where sign
certain
language
types of
came
spells.
from.
Yeah.
Monks taking a vow of silence.
That can't be right.
It is.
Wait, but what about deaf people?
Should we look this up?
I mean, I don't know about deaf people, but I know sign language originated with monks taking a vow of silence and having to find ways to communicate.
Huh? That's cool. Yeah. I'll have to
guess
look into that.
Why don't you at home look into that?
and then comment here with what you found. The thing that I'm interested in as well, though, is like, how do you make these factions feel less like a unified group that has the same ideas? Because even within a faction, there's many different ideologies about how to complete a faction,
Well, other people
or a
can-
faction's goals or whatever.
Either people conform or they don't. you
Sure.
know? Like other people conform or they, secretly don't, or they do in certain ways, or
Let me
certain
rephrase
members
this,
of
because,
them are like corrupt or whatever.
Yeah, because like I totally agree with that. But like my friend Michael, who passed away a few years ago, his whole thing was like, these games have a habit of compressing down motivation, so it's just good versus bad. It's a game.
Right.
This is like a thing.
Yeah.
But if you want to play in a more complex world, which I know Franco you like to do, because when we were in the 13 Isles, all of those people had various degrees of like, do we agree with this thing or not? How much are we willing to do that we don't agree
all had
with to get through the island, kind of thing? You know what I mean?
I think the complexity comes from the players and how they interact with it, right? Because
Right.
like if you're compromising your morals personally, or with if you're RPing really hard, like if you're compromising your character's morals, if you're like compromising where you think you shouldn't be, if you're like adhering to your virtues, if you're being challenged in a way and you're having to rethink things, like that's sort of where the interest in, and it's sort of like, who gives a shit about what the PCs are, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like, yeah, it's not like, oh, they're just like ciphers and stuff and it's like, they're not real.
Yeah.
Like I think like it can, there's ways to make it feel more real. And I think that comes with like like if you're trying to convince them of something,
Yeah.
or if like people have different nuanced ways of like, it's like, oh, why did you join the church? It's like for this reason, that reason, this reason, that reason. And I mean, you just kind of have to improvise that, or you can make a table for it, I guess, but that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. I guess for me, the thing is just I want to be able to maintain complexity. And I think that you're right that this is sort of more on the player side when it comes to how they want to interact with a faction, because I take your point that like if someone self-identifies as part of the faction, then they probably are going to agree with the central overarching goal, but they might have different opinions about how to reach it or whatever within, so that there can be some factional play within a faction. However, it really comes down to the players and how they are going to interact with that faction to come to see if that even matters. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is how do you make your factions follow rules? For example, sorry, Shade, or because I want to hear from you, and I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to this, like Mac, when we play just like card games or whatever, I will never make a alliance with him, because if he can win, he will fuck you over, because he's like, I won, so that's the end of the game. So I don't need this anymore. Like I don't need this faction or support anymore.
Even when we play spades.
And so, and like, because he's like very efficient, very ruthless with how he because he's very, very good at games, man. I got to shout out Mac, friend of the pod. But he, but like, it made me think of when it comes to factions, like when do you decide that the faction's like, I mean, the heroes are all in jail. Like, yeah, we owe them one, but like, let's just leave them in jail.
Oh, I mean, that, and I think for me that gets into the narrative. That's a slightly different question that I was anticipating, because you asked if
that when I say about rules, it's like, do they follow sort of like game logic rules of like we've done something for them, so now they owe us, or
so
like all
a
that
tit for
kind
tat
of
thing?
Yeah,
versus,
like is it sort of like follow a rule of like an economy? Is there an honor system? Do you ever put these things in?
This is why the alignment system is so great to have. Because
And this is also why reaction rolls are great.
for you.
I don't
Reaction
disagree
rolls
with
are-
you personally.
Are they lawful good?
Yeah.
They're going to do whatever they said they were going to do. Are they just good? They're going to weigh the odds.
Yeah.
Are they evil? They're going to definitely do what's best for them in that moment. And you've answered your question based on the alignment of the group overall.
So you would say like
good.
the rule that you would put on whatever faction you create, you would put them on the alignment spectrum, and then just have them follow basically the ideology
the group
that places
would
on them?
have, yes, the faction as a whole would have an alignment that they would lean to. And maybe an individual, if the PC's made a specific friend or contact, then that person would play by a narrative.
I love this.
I don't
didn't
even
think about
think
this
that
before,
you-
but this is great.
And
Again, this is all very Planescape.
Guys, do you want to run a plane screen with just the three of us?
Kill myself.
I don't even think like, well, so yeah, you guys like alignment and stuff. I don't really use alignment because I don't like it, but that sounds like, to me, the first time I've ever heard a good use for it.
Yeah, because the way you just put it makes it sort of like an
steaming over
ideological,
there.
like how do we do business?
Yeah.
Shades
know
of
what I
steamed
mean?
ham right now.
I just no. I'm just very happy because
proud ham.
I'm very proud because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. That's
No,
very
I think
cool.
that-
I love it. Thank you.
I think that's a great way to categorize
Do
your...
you speak lawful?
Yeah. High Gothic versus low Gothic,
Yeah.
baby. Sorry, that's a
They
Warhammer
used
thing.
to, oh yeah, I mean they used to be like was it alignment specific languages?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that honestly, it kind of blew my mind that it's that easy of just like, I'm just going to put this as this entire faction sort of goes by this sort of ideology.
Yeah.
And then I really like the amount of complexity you're allowing in where it's like, but if they know people within that, maybe that they go outside of that because it's like a personal relationship. Right. But it's like, this is how this group views and interacts with the world. You know what I mean?
Also,
If that group is making a decision as a group, that's probably how they're going to make a decision.
Right, yeah.
Right. Individually, it might vary based on your relationship with them specifically, or you can use the reaction roll, which is also from Dungeons and Dragons originally.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then sort of a 2d6, and then you got the bell curve, and usually they're just kind of neutral on you, but sometimes they might be hostile, or sometimes they might be overly friendly and very helpful.
Yeah. I love the idea too that if you're like working for an organization that's just like sort of evil, self-interested, and then you're like, okay, but we've like got a bunch of of good points with them, so we've done all this work, and then you get like thrown in prison or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we'd never seen them before, and just leave you, and you're like, what?
100%. I mean,
I love that. That's great.
That, and I think this gets into that idea of factions as NPCs as well. If a faction should always be looking out for its interests first, and if busting the players out of jail fits within their interests, then yeah, why not? Yeah. If they have a means to get that out there, then yes.
We should do another separate podcast at some point on factions, but motivations based, because like I think it's really interesting what you said, where it's like they're always going to be self-interested, because like a faction is like a group of people that are trying to further a goal. However, like, and again, because I've been Warhammer pilled, immediately what comes to mind is like the Space Marines will go into a full suicidal, like the entire chapter is destroyed in this conflict, because they think it's within their best interest to uphold their honor oaths or whatever it is. And so like they're going to go and do that thing even though it's catastrophic for them. So it's like kind of an interesting thing too, where you're like, yeah, they're going to do whatever's in their group's interest, but that interest doesn't always have to be the interest of the people within the group.
Right, 100%. I mean, it's true. Yeah, true. 100%. It's also, I mean, it is ultimately the interest of the group as an organism, not of the individual components of it.
Right.
Right, because the system doesn't care, but the individuals care.
It super does not.
I have a topic to dig into if we have time.
I had one too. Can I be next?
Yeah.
How would you handle a secret faction, like a faction that's moving around that
I'm doing that right now.
Specifically, like
this is great,
on the up and up?
Wait, on the up and up? What do you mean?
Well, not on the up and up. Like it's not public knowledge.
Visible.
People don't really know. It's not visible. Yeah.
I think they should be visible in small ways. I think I wouldn't do it.
I did it in Lakewood
because
actually. Yeah, no, I can.
I wouldn't do it because I think there should always be ways to interact with the fiction. You know what I mean? Like, like if you there should be some way to find this faction and be able to interact with them.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's like it's supposed to be secret. So how do you make it secret but still?
I think it should just be like kind of difficult.
Yeah.
The way I did it in Lakewood, because there was a faction of like Sandy Tivas and like all of that sort of like, you know, intelligent opposition to you guys. What I did, because they didn't know who this person was and they wouldn't for like another half a year, was I would just give like descriptions of like, hey, like, so like a shadowy figure gets into the truck that was just stopped on the side of the road. The trucker turns around and goes, "You?" And then their face explodes or whatever it is. And then the truck starts driving off. And then it's like, oh, so the players now know something is going on, something is in the works. But like the characters don't. You know what I mean?
I do like the camera pans.
Yeah, I really like using
it's
a camera.
It's a fun thing to do.
I gotta tell you, I don't.
Yeah, no, we're in opposition here. I think
that's fine.
So how are you using your secret faction, if you can speak to that? If it's not too secret.
I guess I don't really use secret factions. There's this like concept called I think it's by DIY and Dragons is the person that came up with this. But I might be wrong. It permeates the blogosphere, you know. Landmark, hidden, secret. A landmark is something that you can see from a distance. Basically, it started as like a hex crawl thing, but then it has been extrapolated to all kinds of things in world building. Hidden is something that like costs something to achieve, like a piece of knowledge that costs something, and then something secret is something that is like beyond hidden, like there is like a very specific barrier. It could even be like a skill check or something like that to be able to get this
information. He winced as he said skill check.
I did. I did. I don't, but that's the thing is I really have only used landmark and hidden things in my games. Yeah. I don't really use a lot of secret things, but I think the thing that is, I think a way that you could use secret is like the cost is really big, or like it takes a great deal of investigation and like actual interaction with what you're looking at to see what the secret is.
for me, like if I were to run this style of faction, probably what I would do is have like a group of like symbols that represent each faction or something, and one of them would just be like a question mark until they discover what it is. Like all of them are question
And
marks.
then that's kind of like visible to them somehow.
Yeah, and so like when you roll on your thing and you're advancing certain things, you would like have a way of showing that sort of like
So in the
physically.
meta,
So like the
they would
meta,
know.
they'd be like, wait, so we've met the Dragon Knights, we've met the like Capierum, we've met the whatever, but there's still one more faction that has that question mark, and it's like pretty.
We've met Hespero.
Yeah, and like who is this other thing? And they're
like
like,
plain
is this like another group of people around here that we're not meeting?
We've met the Harpers.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
so,
trying to
like,
get all
yeah.
our games in here. Just like every faction in all of our games.
So I do like the meta knowledge, again, kind of similar to the camera pans, but a way to go non-meta and just go into the actual game is and I've utilized this to moderate success a little bit in some other games that I've ran, is that this is the faction that if you have all the systems that Franco was really promoting at the top, or not, this is the one that doesn't play by that system. And it is something that narratively, when the moment feels right, you might sprinkle something in. And it should be a recurring thing that the players can pick up on. So like, maybe sometimes they find it, and you can also have systems on this, but, maybe sometimes when they find a dead body, they smell lilac in the air.
Ooh,
And stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you did that with the kind of with like the names thing. Like there's some guy out there stealing people's like existences.
Right.
That you have hinted that is related to what I'm doing, collecting names of masked lords and sending them to hell, to the hell war.
He also did this very similarly in the same game where it was like with the vampires under the underground.
I
where
guess
you
I
were-
did do this for
where
you guys too.
I think it's like I think effective use of like omens and signs
Yeah.
and spores and stuff like that, which is like something that you can roll up on a random table. Like if you're like
100%.
one of your random encounters could be like I use this example all the time, right? The giant, you know, it's like, oh, your random encounter is somebody, like a bunch of soldiers crushed under a giant boulder and the footprints of giants like walking away from the encounter. And it's sort of like, oh, okay, like that's a sign that the giants exist, right? And it's like, if that's like that's a random encounter, you can throw stuff like that onto your random encounter and they can be related to a secret faction. Like, oh, you're going into the woods and then you see this like mysterious like symbol on the tree, and the tree is like rubbery now or something. Like what is this?
Good. Yeah.
And you could still also have goals for these people too, because and then it just kind of are the players doing something where those goals would align and make sense for this to kind of just like pop its head in for a second, and it's only when the players have a chance to really chase down one of these individuals that the secret begins to unravel, and eventually they blow out some conspiracy and this becomes the big new bad, or oh my gosh, everything we thought we were doing is actually bad.
Like when you guys destroyed that island.
I kind of
we knew we were doing bad things.
Oh, you did though. That's so funny. I feel like you revealed that recently.
I
that
thought
you're like,
I was helping.
That's so good.
But I think it's also like you could even reveal like neutral secret factions that way of like maybe there's an Assassin's Guild or something that is below radar, but to prove it was them who killed someone, they always cut the ear off their victim or something. Right. And so whenever you find a body, like you could say like, oh the body was like stabbed and it looks like it was a pretty fresh kill. Its ear is gone. But like if the amount of times you do that, eventually a player will be like, wait.
Yeah.
Why are we finding all these fucking people with?
You just give me a great idea, like a neutral secret organization that's just like historians.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't want to be bothered by like nobles and generals who are like,
or just like their outlook on an event swayed in either way. Going back to your like neutral thing.
Yeah.
They're like going to events. They're like, we do not want to be involved. We just want to record.
We just
shit.
want the facts. We're just journalists. We're just recording the things. We don't want any sway opinions one way or another.
Yeah.
And we just want to hide our books so that they can be found later.
Yeah, like 10,000 years later. Yeah.
I have going off of that thing that you just said.
Is this
and also
the point that you
the point that I wanted to talk about?
Hell yeah.
I'm going to put up a little straw man from that Twitter post that we had seen forever ago that, the people that hated, some person that hated random tables or whatever. The reason that I inject randomness into my game is because I want to reduce as much of my bias as possible. And I think like when I try to make narrative choices, I feel like I'm worried that I am biased about those choices. That is usually why I introduce more randomness.
Biased in what way?
Like biased either towards or like for or against the players. I don't want them to feel like I'm playing against them. And that's why, and usually like if I talk about like for example, recently this was so funny, but so a long time ago, they smuggled a secret package to the king from
Just to clarify, when you say they, you mean your table.
My party, the party of PCs that are in my game. They smuggled a package to the king as a gift. They like handed it off to some person, and that person gave it to the king. And then later on, they found out that this package was probably a gator egg that was like a giant gator egg that was taken by the from the crocodile kingdom that is like on the shores like elsewhere or whatever. Yeah, when I said the Gator War, I was serious.
I knew you were serious, but I do love just hearing it more.
And so now they are marching the war onto this kingdom.
Yeah.
And so the PCs are like, okay, we need to like stop this conflict somehow or whatever. Like, how do we do that? And they're like, okay, let's go, figure out who it was that ordered this smuggling that we were complicit in accidentally, because they didn't know what was in the package. And so they find out who it is. They go up to her. She's an abbess of the church, and they're like, "Hey, like, and so like the sort of the character that was talking to her was like, "Hey, we think that like we know that it was you that gave the gator egg to the king, and we know that it was you that ordered like it to be smuggled from the crocodile kingdom, and now they're marching to war. So we know this or whatever." She was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Wait here," and then. And then she came back later with a bunch of people to set the house on fire that they were in. And I was telling them, like, I was like trying to be really upfront with them, and I was like, "Listen, I know this doesn't sound great, but you guys can see this kind of coming. Like, you know, this is like a little bit weird. And I also want you to know that she felt threatened by the things that you said. Because perhaps you didn't deliver it in the best way. And also I have here on her personality sheet here, like that I'm looking at, that she is, I forget what the personality was exactly, but it was definitely, she's like really ambitious and is like kind of cutthroat. Because she's like a 20-year-old abbess. Which is like, how do you become an abbess at 20? I don't know. I'm being really pious. I don't know. Politicking, maybe. But so she, you know, it's like she's gonna try to get around what, like, are these people trying to blackmail me? Whatever, like, whatever. I'll just set them on fire. I'm an abbess. Like, everyone's gonna believe me. And so that's kind of what I went with, and they seem to be fine with it. But I was trying to be like, let me be like open about it, and I'm trying to like walk through my decision making here. Because otherwise, and then I also rolled a reaction roll for her. And I think it was like neutral or whatever. And it was just like a lot of different things that were playing into it, like so I could strip as much of my bias away from it.
This is so fascinating. I want to hear what you have to say, Shade. It's like, this, I think, is where we are on the opposite things of the spectrum, is where instead of taking my bias out, I always say in the start of all my sessions or whatever, I'm 100% on your side. Like, I am the biggest fan of your characters. You think that you're the biggest fan of your character?
It's very 5e.
It's me. It's like, it's me, baby. I'm so excited to see what they're going to do next. And in that way, I've taken the fear of like bias against them out as well, because I'm just like, I think that you guys rock and I want to see you guys do your best. I'm going to set up these situations to test them and like put you through it, but like I'm never against you or your characters.
I'm not against them either.
No, totally. But I'm saying there's just like two different philosophical views on how to remove that bias. You know what I mean?
I don't think I remove the bias because I don't think that I care, but.
I don't give a shit about your characters.
But what I do, I do try to go in is like, I don't want this game to end any more than you do. So I'm not trying. I'm not trying to kill this. I'm not trying to kill your characters. But I'm just doing what I think these. I'm doing what I think the characters will do, regardless of how it affects you.
I think you are good at that.
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think your characters are very like they feel like you're. I feel like you're also very open about it, where you're like, this is what this person would do, I think, here, and like, and then you'll be like, sorry guys, like, well, you never apologize, but you know, like, I think this is what this person would do, and then people get mad, and then you're like, no, this is what they would do, like, this makes sense, right? And it's like, yeah I guess that's true.
So, hearing all of that, there's something that I'm a little embarrassed to admit this because I'm in my late 30s, pushing towards, marching towards the grim door of 40.
Okay. I think it's exciting.
At this age, I still don't really know how one becomes an abbess.
Yeah.
Sorry. But more seriously.
All right.
Well, the way I know it to happen,
Guys, this is almost an hour-long episode already.
is that the abbot will usually be near his or her final season.
Right.
And then they'll name the next mouse or badger that they think should be the leader of Redwall. And they'll take on the role of abbot or abbess when that one dies, and they'll have the heir apparent ready to go.
And now I know. But more to the bias thing, I will say with faction play and things like that, I 100%, I think random tables are very useful for that. I think guiding stars are always the thing that you can default to with a faction in particular, and you've already kind of outlined that with the Mouse Ritter stuff, Franco, and you with the alignment table, Rio. Having this idea of like, well, this faction believes this thing, which is this kind of morality, and just using that as kind of the deciding factor in a faction play makes a lot of sense to me. So
yeah, cool. I think we cracked this case wide open, everybody.
Brought it back to factions at the end.
Sick.
Everybody, if you like what you heard here, you should subscribe.
You already told them.
Yeah, but I'm going to do it again because you know how important it is to this podcast that people listen? Pretty important. Join our Patreon, or patreon.com/tabletop, or head to our website, tabletopod.com, and you can join our Discord and other stuff. We have so much going on, so join the club, get into it, pump the jams, and we'll see you next Monday. Okay, bye.
Bye.